Listen to that again. 3 notes, a little over a second long. You've heard this sound probably around 100,000 times. Now, listen to this. Those two sounds don't seem like they have anything in common. One is engineered, one is biological. One was written in an afternoon by a guy who wasn't even trying. One has been evolving for 200,000 years. But I put them both into a spectrum analyzer this week, and they peak in the same place. Right here, between 2 and 4 kilohertz. The iPhone, the cry, the smoke alarm, and the emergency siren all lives there. Every sound that has ever successfully demanded a human being's attention lives in the same narrow neighborhood of frequencies. And here's the part that bothered me for a week after I measured it. Nobody at Apple chose this. The composer of the tritone has said that he wasn't thinking about psychoacoustics. He was doing a favor for a friend and he picked his favorite out of 28 options in an afternoon. So how does an accidental sound end up in the exact same acoustic band as a baby's cry and works exactly the same way? The answer isn't design. It's something much older than design.
I am Kemal Oksal, professor at Berklee College of Music. For over 20 years, I've worked as a music producer, conductor, and educator, leading orchestras, producing albums, and mentoring young artists. Now, I invite you to discover the stories that shape what we hear. Each week, I open the words behind the music, and whether you are a musician or not, you are invited. So, let's get started.
As a music producer, I've spent most of my life working with frequencies, and this part of the spectrum, between 2 and 4,000 Hertz, is very important for us. Every producer knows it. It's where a violin's upper notes live. It's where a lead vocal sits when it has to cut through a full band. It's where we go in a mix when we want something to be heard over everything else. In the studio, we have a lot of words for this part of the spectrum. When we want more of it, we call it presence. We call it bite on a guitar, snap on a snare drum, crunch when a guitar is distorted in the right way. And when there is too much of it, we change the words. We call it harsh, we call it brittle, we call it edge, we call it pointy. That's 10 different words for one small part of what we can hear. Producers don't invent words by accident. This part of the spectrum does more work on the human body than any other part. What I hadn't thought about until this week is how many other sounds live there too. Same band, every one of them. And it's not just the tritone. I run every default iPhone notification through a spectrum analyzer. Different sounds, different composers, all peaking between 2 and 4 kilohertz. There's a reason for that. The reason is the shape of the ear itself. Human ears don't hear all frequencies equally. We are not microphones. Although, even 2 microphones of the same model don't hear the same. But that's a video for another day. Our ears have a favorite part of the spectrum, and it is built into their shape. Right here, in this band, we are roughly 3 times more sensitive than at the low end of our range. A sound at 3000 Hz feels much louder than the same physical sound at 200 Hz. Every human ear has this same preference. So if you are a sound designer or a producer, you have one real option. You aim for this band. Down here, your ears barely care. You feel it in your chest. But as I open this filter, watch what happens to your body. This is where every sound that ever caught a human being's attention lives. And for most of human history, only one thing knew how to live there. This, a human baby. The same place on the spectrum, lit up the same way. But this one came first, before the phone, before the siren, before any sound a human being ever built on purpose. So a baby's voice has a fundamental note around 450 Hz, much higher than an adult voice, which sits around 124 men and 210 for women. But here's the part that matters. No voice ever produces just one note. Every voice produces a fundamental and a stack of harmonics on top of it. Extra notes at exactly 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the fundamental. For a baby, those harmonics land at 2 to 4 kHz. The fundamental frequency isn't what you hear loudest. Your ear acts like the filter I just opened on the synth. The harmonics that land in that 2 to 4 kHz band are the ones your ear amplifies the most. There's another reason for this too. The throat and the mouth above the vocal cords act as a small resonator. The smaller the resonator, the higher its frequency, which pushes even more energy into these specific frequencies. For most of human history, this was one of the most important notification sounds that lived in this frequency band. And then in modern times, we figured out how to make sounds in these specific frequencies. For most of history, these sounds were rare. A church bell rang a few times a day, a factory whistle twice, a school bell 3 or 4, a siren almost never, unless you are living in a big city. What we did not know, what nobody knew until very recently, is what happens when you put a small glowing rectangle in every human's pocket and let it speak in the same band dozens of times a day. That's the part of the story we still don't have an ending for. Let's go back to the beginning. The man who made this sound is named Kelly Jacklin. He was a software engineer at Apple, but the sound wasn't made for Apple. It was made as a favor for a friend at a small startup called SoundJam. In 1999, 8 years before the iPhone existed, Jacklin's friend Jeff Robin asked him to make a sound that would play when a CD finished burning in their app. He wrote a small script that generated random 3-note sequences. He listened to 28 of them. He named his favorite 158 Marimba. He just wanted something that sounded happy. The whole thing took an afternoon. Then Apple bought SoundJam. The startup became iTunes. The sound came with it. And by a result of a corporate purchase, this small favor became maybe one of the most played sounds in human history. And it lives, by accident, in the exact same place as a crying child. Here is what I keep thinking about. Kelly Jacklin didn't choose this specific spectrum, but the spectrum chose him. He listened to 28 options. He picked the one that sounded happy. What he didn't know is that his own ear had already chosen for him, long before he sat down at the keyboard. 2 sounds arrive at the same spectrum, 200,000 years apart. When I started looking into this, I thought I was going to make a video about a clever piece of design. What I found was older than design. The phone in your pocket is using a frequency band that your great-great-grandmother's ears were already shaped to notice. 200,000 years of human survival condensed into 3 notes you probably hear 100 times a day. Now you know why. See you on the next one.